Okay, this is going to be a bit of a meaty video, but I think it's going to set us up good to follow some of the big political scraps that are coming. So we have about 1 year left till our big election, and all of the parties are gearing up to start trying to beg you for your vote. National and Labour are pretty much our default parties for a lot of people. There's some people that are staunch National, staunch Labour, and they don't really change. But there's a group of people called swing voters who every year they decide who they like more and vote for them. And these ones are the deciders. And even more of the deciders are the ones that don't vote at all. That group is so big that they would change the game completely if all of them voted. So basically all the parties have to try to convince you that they're going to be the best party and they're going to have the best new laws and they're going to do the coolest new things and basically just try to win your vote. And that's called campaigning. And they'll put out these big what they call policy announcements, which are the things that they're going to campaign on. National has always called themselves the party of the economy, which means that they think that they're the best at making businesses thrive and making more money go around. But they're struggling more and more each year to keep that title because our economy has gotten worse when economies like the UK, Canada and Australia have gotten better. So Labour has basically kicked into third gear and they're starting to put out these policies on what they're going to campaign for to try to take National's crown. They've recently just put out two big ones, and these are the New Zealand Future Fund and the capital gains tax. It's taken me a while to get my head around them, and so I'm going to try to break them down. So one is the New Zealand Future Fund, which is basically a pool of money and things that are worth money, which we call assets. So anything's an asset, like your phone is an asset if it's still worth money, your house is an asset, your car is an asset. But in the context of the government, that's things like big forests, like commercial forests, or big power plants. So this future fund is a pool of money and a pool of assets, and what they want to do with this pool is basically invest in New Zealand businesses. To understand this, you have to kind of get how a business runs generally. So you take a business, say the warehouse, you've got the directors who manage that business, and then you've got the shareholders who own the business. And that ownership comes from buying shares. So if you've ever watched Shark Tank, the millionaires that sit on the panel will say to the person who's pitching to them, I'll give you $100,000 for 15% of your business. And so if the warehouse took that, that millionaire would own 15% of the warehouse or whatever. And then the warehouse would take that 100 grand and go away, and they'd try to expand, or they'd try to open a new shop or do something to try to get their profits up. And if they do get their profits up, they pay out what's called a dividend to shareholders, which is basically a slice of the profit pie. So the Labour government with this future fund wants to become one of those shareholders. Not necessarily for the warehouse, we don't really know what yet, but basically Labour wants to take this pool of money, buy some shares in New Zealand businesses, hope those businesses make a profit, pay a little bit back of that pie to the government, who can then do it again with more businesses and basically create this big sovereign wealth fund. And the idea behind it is that you're growing the businesses and keeping all the money within New Zealand, because at the moment a lot of the investors live overseas and basically take those profits away overseas. So I thought, oh, okay, this idea sounds pretty good, I'm going to go research it. So there's a couple of countries with really successful sovereign wealth funds, and Norway and China at the moment have the biggest ones. But they're kind of exceptions. Norway basically started with a big nest egg because they've got heaps of oil, and so they were already kind of wealthy and they put this in here and built it. And China's come from their trade stuff, and obviously they're one of the biggest trade people in the world, and so they get a lot of wealth from that. Singapore has one as well, which the Labour Party talked about, and that started from quite a small amount of money. But I checked the investments that they have, and about 50% of their investments are in overseas companies anyway, including companies like BlackRock. Donald Trump also announced in February this year that they want to start a USA sovereign wealth fund. But I was looking into that too, and I have no idea how they're planning to do that. Because even though the USA has heaps of oil, they've set themselves up in a way that the government doesn't actually own the oil, and so they also get bugger all tax from that. And also the USA sold heaps of things that they own, which means that the United States now owes more in debt than they actually own in assets. Like, at least New Zealand still owns more than it owes. And talking of selling assets, this New Zealand Future Fund is also part of like an overarching beef between National and Labour, because the national government, a bit like the United States government, is kind of warming up and planting the seed of selling things that the New Zealand government currently owns, whereas Labour is super opposed to that. They want to continue to own the things that New Zealand does. And so Labour, by announcing this future fund and saying we're going to put New Zealand assets in it, they're basically finding a way to protect those assets from the national government coming in the future and selling them off. But we're not exactly sure what things the Labour government wants to put in this fund, because the document that they put out, it wasn't very long and it didn't have much info in it. And I thought, oh well, still a year out, there's heaps of time for them to flesh out the details. So I'll go look at what National Act and New Zealand First have to say about it. And their biggest critique is that there's not enough detail.
Very short of detail. I mean, I put more effort into my Uber Eats order than Labour's put into their future fund. I mean, it's...
Roast. David Seymour says it's a bad idea because politicians aren't good investors, but that doesn't really add up because quite a few countries overseas are doing it really well. And also we're kind of already doing the same thing with what's called the NZ Super Fund, which is pretty much the same idea, a pool of money that's investing in things to try to build wealth specifically for retirement. But the difference with that one is only 11% of that money is invested in New Zealand. The National Party goes on and on about growth and productivity and investing in businesses, blah blah blah, so I had a look into it. And New Zealand does have pretty low investment in our businesses, especially our small businesses, compared to other countries. So I was trying to figure out why New Zealanders aren't just naturally investing in small businesses and growing our economy here. And that brings me to Labour's second big announcement policy, which is a capital gains tax, which I promise won't take as long. Capital gains is the profit you make when you sell something for more than what you bought it for. The obvious example is a house. If you buy a house for 100k, you wait a few years, it goes up in value and you sell it for 120k, that extra 20k is what's called the capital gain. So that capital gain doesn't get taxed at all in New Zealand, even though it's income, you didn't earn it and you didn't employ anyone with it. And New Zealand is weird as fuck for not taxing this. UK, Aussie, even the United States all tax that capital gain. Tax experts from around the world look at us and go, damn, New Zealand hates its working people, making them carry the majority of the tax, while they let the wealthy people just buy things, flick it off for profit, and pay no tax on it. In New Zealand, this is a glaring, obvious black hole of why we have low investment in our small businesses. Why would you invest in a small business when there's a chance that one year they don't turn a profit or they even go under, when you could just sink your money into a property in Auckland, wait a few years for it to go up in value, and then bank 200k without tax? That whole process is called property speculation. Labour has said, right, it's time we catch up with the rest of the world and close this ridiculous loophole and put a capital gains tax on investment properties. So that's properties that people have just bought to flick off for profit, not your actual family home that you live in. And National Act and New Zealand First are crashing out over it, saying that they're just obsessed with taxes and basically trying to scare everyone by saying everyone's going to get taxed more by this capital gains tax. So here the National Party said, zoom in to see who will get taxed more under Labour. You. But the thing to know about the capital gains tax that the Labour Party wants to do, it's only going to affect 1 in every 10 people. So when I saw that National Party meme and I zoomed in and it said you, I was like, no it doesn't. I don't have any investment properties. And that's 90% of us. This interview with Chris Luxon is unreal and it shows the exact problem. If our own Prime Minister is not going to invest in our small businesses and instead sinks his money into property, why would anybody else invest in small businesses?
Capital gains of probably $1.5 million if you sold those houses today.
I don't know, Jack. I honestly don't look at it. I don't follow it. I have those houses.
So how much tax would you pay? Just to be totally clear, on what, $1.5 million, how much tax would you pay?
Well, we don't have a capital gains tax here in New Zealand, Jack, so I wouldn't pay anything.
How many people are employed by your investment properties?
Sorry?
How many people are employed by your investment properties?
Sorry, but they're investment properties. What do you mean in terms of employment?
Well, that's the point, right?
You're trying to make a point about capital gains tax.
No, the point I'm trying to make is actually about productivity. Because you said in your maiden speech that productivity was the #1 thing holding back our standard of living. You've sold yourself as a top business leader and economic expert, and with all your economic nous, you followed the incentives and you chose to put your money for investments into houses. And now you are going to reverse all of those changes to property investment incentives. You will loosen the laws on residential landlords, you'll pull back the bright line test, you will reinstate interest deductibility. My question is, what will stop other New Zealanders from just doing what you did, following the incentives and pouring their money into unproductive assets like housing?